So after 9 years, we finally got George Miller's prequel of Furiosa. It's finally here, and it's the perfect time to rank all 10 films from mastermind George Miller. Very excited to do this one just because I didn't really realize until now, but I love George Miller as a director, and not just because of the Mad Max films, which are great, we'll talk about them, but most of the stuff outside of Mad Max I think is also great, and I don't think he's ever really even yet made a bad movie. But just to let you guys know, I am not counting his Twilight Zone short film that he made for the Twilight Zone movie that starred John Lithgow, and it was like the remake of a Twilight Zone episode that I haven't seen. It's the one on the plane. I haven't seen that episode, but the segment that he made was directed perfectly. John Lithgow gives a great performance, as he always does. Great segments. I can't decide sometimes if I like that segment or the Joe Dante segment with the kid. Overall, great segment that helped save the film that didn't really have the best first two segments. But overall, great. And also, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I'm not counting Babe as well. He didn't direct Babe, but he wrote it and produced it. That's why I still gonna display my box of Babe on there, because George Miller still heavily worked on it. Babe 2, he did direct. And anyway, let's get right into it. So coming in at number 10 and 9 is both Happy Feet 1 and 2. I don't know if this is a controversial choice or not, but yeah, I'm not really big into these Happy Feet movies. I liked Happy Feet 1 when I saw it because I didn't see it in theaters. I was an infant, so I was not able to see it. So I remember liking it the first time. I watched it on my mom's computer, and I had fun, from what I remember. And the second film, I didn't see the second one in theaters, even though I could have. I was like 5 when it came out, so I would have been like, I could have gone to see this in theaters, and I would have been fine. But I would later catch it on cable at my grandparents' house, but I never finished it. That's all my knowledge of Happy Feet. Now finally rewatching these movies years after, they're not really his best work. They still have neat visuals to it, but overall, I'm not too big on these movies. If you want like a more clear ranking, like which one do I think is worse or better? I think Happy Feet 2 is like a lot lesser than Happy Feet. Maybe that's because Happy Feet kind of had something interesting in there, with like a penguin like trying to seek out more of the world and see like what's causing problems. And Happy Feet 2, I think, was just a climate change film, but bit of a I think they were trying to make a bit of like a disaster film, because it was like about an iceberg trapping all the emperor penguins in their territory. And that's really it. And they've got Hank Azaria to basically play Bartok from Anastasia, but not as a bat this time. Now he's just a pelican. No, that's not. I'm gonna put it on the screen what type of bird he's supposed to be, because the whole point of the film is that all the penguins think that he's a penguin that can fly, when actually he's just some other bird that can fly. That's really it. And they had Pink replace Brittany Murphy, who was kind of dead at the time, so they couldn't get her back, and so they got Pink, and she's all right. The only really cool scene that stood out was when all of those walruses. I'm gonna have to. I gotta edit onto the screen what kind of sea creature, Arctic creature they were, because I don't know if they were technically seals. When they're like going down the ice, trying to like break the ice down, singing "Rolling, Rolling, Rolling."
Rolling, 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 keep moving, 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 keep them longings moving, flying, rain and wind and weather, hell them for leather, wishing the girl was by my side.
That was awesome. Overall, it's just a whatever movie. Same with Happy Feet, and like I think I know I said the visuals are great, but at times I think the animation, it's not terrible, but it always just looks weird. And that's because, I mean, the penguins, like, they had to make, I think they wanted something a little more realistic. But I don't think it really works. I think it should have been a little more cartoony. I don't know, it's just, some parts, I don't know, Happy Feet overall didn't click for me, and God, Hugh Jackman as, like, this character called Memphis, and he acts like Elvis Presley. Get it? His name is Memphis, because Elvis was born in Memphis, and his name is...
I'm feeling so lonely, baby. I'm feeling so lonely. Oh, I'm feeling so lonely.
I really don't want to talk more about Happy Feet. These two movies, not really George Miller's best work. So coming in at number 8 is the time we acknowledge my least favorite Mad Max film, and it's a lot of people's least favorite Mad Max film, and that is Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. If you guys know anything about Thunderdome and you've heard all the kind of like the reviews, my review is not as different as everyone else. It's the whole consensus. The first half in Bartertown is pretty cool. Tina Turner's pretty cool. Master Blaster's pretty cool. The Thunderdome fight scene is pretty cool. Some of the lines are really cool in the opening, and that's really about it. And then Max goes on exile, and then there had to be kids, which are the total like Ewoks of this whole Mad Max franchise. But even then, I feel just more like I'm being disrespectful to the Ewoks, because the Ewoks were cool at times, and these kids are just like, I hope this is the part I didn't care about. Like, if Beyond Thunderdome was just Gladiator but with Mad Max and in his world, this movie would have been awesome if it was just that. Overall, it's like, once he leaves Bartertown, it's just kind of mediocre from there. But it is kind of pick up, because the whole train truck chase at the end, it's pretty cool. But look, I think a film always still needs to have like something more exciting in the middle, and this is like, which I now realizing it, the odd number Mad Max movies tend to now have very kind of boring middle acts, but we'll talk about that first one later. Overall, not the biggest fan of Thunderdome. It has some cool moments. Mel Gibson is still pretty good. Tina Turner is really good as the bad guy. But man, not really the best movie for Mel Gibson to go off of, even though he didn't really know it was his last at the time. But I kind of do wish Mel Gibson would play Max again, because, you know, I know people are crazy about Tom Hardy, but Mel Gibson is always just going to be Mad Max. So coming in at number 7 is the George Miller film that no one talks about or even knows exists, and it is called Lorenzo's Oil. Now, this is a movie about a kid who gets this kind of like disease or kind of like disability called ALD, which is something that happens in the brain when there's like too much fatty amino acids. It's been a while since I took living environment. I was a freshman in high school. Now I'm a senior in high school, so it's been some time since I've learned any of this stuff. So if you know anything about George Miller, you would kind of know that he was like a doctor or like a surgeon, or like, you know, I think more of a doctor who would always work in the emergency rooms in order to finance films like Mad Max. And that's what he did. And so in his line of work, you can't really be surprised that he actually did make a film about, kind of made it like this medical drama about this kid. Because, you know, being a doctor, this would be definitely something that he would be interested in making into a film. And it stars big names like Susan Sarandon and Nick Nolte doing a Italian accent that's not good, and it's like one of these performances where it's just like, why couldn't you just hire an Italian actor I mean, I'm trying to like think in my head like who would have been the best choice to pair up with Susan Sarandon. Oh, man, this is like one of those moments where like Hollywood just really should have gotten like an actual actor of that, like, you know, from that country, and not just, you know, like an American. It didn't really work. He's not terrible though, it just doesn't feel right. And then back to like the actors, and there are some actors that you might be kind of familiar with. I forget his name, but the guy from Independence Day and The Game, and also the Seinfeld lawyer that, you know, was against them at the season finale. He's in it. He's in a lot of movies. And Uncle Frank from Home Alone, he's also in this movie. The same year he did Home Alone 2. They do a decent job, but overall this movie, it's got its good moments. George Miller is like a really good director with this. He's definitely giving his A game still. Susan Sarandon is really good. She's a great actress, but overall I think the movie is just kind of, it's good to almost like a mediocre point, because it just gets like very redundant. Oh, I mean, like I just think it's kind of whatever a bit. It was something I think George Miller was passionate in, and that's what you kind of get. It's just a medical drama by George Miller, who is a doctor. So this is something that he cares about. So coming in at number 7 is the film that started it all, Mad Max. Now this is a movie that I would also say it's not very good, but no, I actually love Mad Max 79. I think it's great. I think Mel Gibson is actually really good. Well, towards the end when he kind of like, he's really good. He's fine throughout like the majority, but at the end he is really good. Hugh Keys Burns is also awesome as the toe cutter. Probably one of like he's probably the second best Mad Max villain, next to the other Hugh Keys Burns Mad Max villain that he played later on. I think it's awesome. I think the car chases, you know, just for a low budget movie, is pretty cool, and the music's also really good, because, you know, this was a very like a low budget movie, around like $1,000 to make, and it still had like a it feels still like it's a lot bigger than it is, which I think like you gotta give a little props to George Miller for making this movie feel a lot more grander than it really was. I know I said before that Beyond Thunderdome was also like a, you know, like how it got like, you know, it gets very mediocre towards the middle, and I'm kind of said the same thing with the first Mad Max. And look, it kind of does after when Goose gets horribly burned. The movie definitely kind of like quiets down and becomes a little more melodrama with, you know, see more of Max and his wife as they escape reality, or society, which I don't think it's as bad as Beyond Thunderdome, because I think this stuff is meant to feel a little more tragic, because you know, you have like the first act being all like, you know, like it's all madness and like car chases and just all these crimes that are happening, and then it gets to the point where Max has to get out of it, but then after his wife dies, he's now pulled back into this world, and I think it works a little bit better. But I think people should know though that this movie definitely does dip in like, you know, intenseness kind of. So, but there's still like a really good there's like a good reason for it. But overall, I definitely had a lot of enjoyment of this movie. Again, like I said, car chases are really fun. Just for what it was, it's just still impressive that they were able to get all of these stunts into this just one movie. And it's just awesome. George Miller really knocked it out of the park for this movie. So for both 6 and 5, I kind of both grouped his fantasy films together. And it was hard to decide. Pick the one, because they both have good actors in it. But my number 5 pick is Jack Nicholson. 3,000 Years of Longing does not have that. But 3,000 Years of Longing is still a pretty good movie. I think it's I think it's a nice little small movie that George Miller made in between Fury Road and Furiosa. That is just kind of nice and relaxing to watch, and it's just a good character study on these, on this woman and the djinn, or I don't know, genie, but they call him a djinn, and kind of just know their lives and all these like stories that the djinn has to tell her. It's all very interesting, and George Miller, who has said that dialogue sometimes slows movies down, really does a great job with his visuals. You can kind of complain about what he says, but you got to agree, though, that his visuals, in I think all of his movies, there is always a visually stunning aspect, and it's definitely in this movie. It all feels like something that can just be hung on a wall as a painting. Tilda Swinton and Idris Elba, they got great chemistry together. That's amazing. Overall, 3,000 Years of Longing is just a nice, small, little movie to watch that has some good stuff in it. And I don't really think people really liked it when it came out, which, now thinking about it, like, a lot of George Miller's movies are definitely can be very polarizing when they come out. Like, even people like to hail Fury Road, but Fury Road is a movie that people complain about how too much chasing in it. And people kind of thought 3,000 Years of Longing was very mediocre, but I don't think it is. I think 3,000 Years of Longing is awesome. And I think more people should give this a chance. So as I said before, number 5 is Witches of Eastwick, but that is mainly because it's got Jack Nicholson in it. Jack Nicholson is pretty much awesome in pretty much most of the things that he's in, and him basically playing a devil is just awesome and hilarious and almost frightening to watch at times in this movie. That again has great direction from Miller and also great performances from both Susan Sarandon and Michelle Pfeiffer, and Cher, who gives a pretty good performance, but I think Susan Sarandon and Michelle Pfeiffer kind of outdo her in this. And also there is some kind of like good side performances from both Richard Jenkins, who is also in a very early performance from him, and Veronica Cartwright, or is it Nancy Cartwright? There's like two. I think it's Nancy Cartwright. The girl from Alien. My only problem with this movie, though, is that I don't feel like we get enough scenes of the witches or Daryl kind of scaring or torturing other people in the town. Just besides Nancy Cartwright, the girl from Alien. The girl from the Alien is like, I feel like the only person that gets tortured. They don't do anything to the mayor, who is like always kind of like sexually harassing Susan Sarandon in this. I feel like that was a bit of a missed opportunity in this. But overall, the colors, the look by Miller is great. I think the acting is still great, and I think it's just it's a fun 80s horror comedy that everyone should still check out. So number 4 is very hard to say with a straight face sometimes, but it is Babe, Pig in the City. That's right. Babe, Pig in the City, the one where Babe is in the city. That's the best joke I got. I think this movie is actually amazing. Well, I feel like I should first say my thoughts on the first Babe. The first Babe is pretty good. It's, it's not by George Miller, but I think some of the filmmaking is pretty good, and it's definitely got a lot of scenes, for kids, and for me, I was like, 7 watching this, and it just kind of like makes you go, oh my god, this is terrifying, in a good, clever way. And it's good, it's got a good, fantasy realism to it that I kind of enjoy. Big Pig in the City is like more of that weird stuff from the first Babe, but on like steroids, basically. It's like a city that is like a combination of all cities, but for a lot of like the kind of like the up closer parts of the city, they went with the more Venice looking kind of city, probably just to have some more like animal action happen. I guess that's something more quieter. I don't think the entire city though has that Venice look. There's definitely parts that it doesn't. But overall, this movie, I like again from Miller. He's got a lot of great scenes in his movies. Every shot has something to it that is just so whimsical and yet frightening. Just a lot of just kind of joy and sadness, and it's just overall, it's just a great little quirky film that kind of just teaches us to just help out one another and just be good to one another. And when you really think about it, the Babe movies were basically just the Paddington films of the 90s, where an animal has to kind of teach people or other animals that kindness always outrules everything else. So I love Babe Pig in the City. I love it. I can't just say how much I appreciate all of the magical, whimsical aspects of this movie. So overall, it's my favorite George Miller movie that's not Mad Max related. So let's get to the top 3, which is all just Mad Max related stuff. Alright, so coming in at number 3 is the Mad Max film that everyone kind of considers to be the first true Mad Max movie. And that is Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior. I know, yeah, it was technically meant to be Mad Max 2. We called it The Road Warrior because Mad Max wasn't so big here. But I kind of like that when home video releases kind of just combine Mad Max 2 with The Road Warrior, because Road Warrior is a pretty cool title, let's all admit. And it's the best title also for just a pretty cool, solid 80s action film. There's all the best car chases, the best sets that you could ever ask from a movie from this era. And also just the best acting from Mel Gibson, who's just really great in this. And he hardly has that many lines, but yeah, he is amazing in this movie. Also, Bruce Spence as the gyro captain, and Ernest Wells as Wes, as the main bad henchman character. He's awesome. Lord Humongous. Strangely enough, I always kind of every time I watch this movie, I always think Lord Humongous is gonna have such a deeper voice. But then I watch it and he's it does, the voice never really feels like that's the proper voice for that character. But it's still a cool villain to just look at and just be kind of frightened of all the time. And look, Road Warrior, it's just a great, fun movie. And it's just a good work-off of Mad Max. And it kind of really goes into, this is where the whole thing of making these Mad Max movies, and including Furiosa, to feel like these tall tales that no one really knows can get it really right of what happened. But this is kind of where the Mad Max films use the formula a little bit better. But coming in number 2 is a bit of a tough one because it's so new, and yet I feel like a lot of people are mixed on this one. And that is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. This one was really hard to choose. It's either this or Road Warrior. But overall, Road Warrior, Fury Road, and Furiosa, everything about it is just so breathtaking. Especially with Fury Road and Furiosa. Their effects are just so mind-blowing to just watch. Especially seeing Furiosa in the theater, it's one of the most coolest things I've ever seen. Not as cool as Dune Part 2, which I think is still the best movie I've seen in IMAX. That movie was mainly more shot for IMAX than this movie was. But still seeing Furiosa on IMAX at times was very cool to see. And it's Furiosa, I think, just, as a prequel, and kind of, even I was a little not really interested in this. If you wanted to do a Furiosa spin-off, I would have rather made it a sequel. Kind of do a, or just do a Godfather Part 2 did, and just have it be a, Furiosa's rise as the new lead of the Citadel to her origin. I would have maybe wanted that. Or honestly, just a movie with Charlize Theron as Furiosa, just kicking ass and dealing with the Citadel. That would have been pretty cool to watch. But overall, I'm still happy we got this movie because it's able to just still be like an awesome, fun action movie with some great performances, especially from Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth, who, my God, after being in Thor: Love and Thunder and embarrassing himself, really needed to be in this movie because he is so awesome in this, despite his funny nose. He gives off the best villain performance from, out of all the Avenger actors who've played bad guys, from Chris Evans in Knives Out, Robert Downey Jr. in Oppenheimer, and Mark Ruffalo in Poor Things. I think Chris Hemsworth has given the best antagonist role. He's awesome in this movie. So is everyone else with Anya Taylor-Joy, who's also like really good as Furiosa. I kind of believed her as like the, like teen or like 20-year-old Furiosa. I truly believe that was her, still. And I think this actually might be Anya Taylor-Joy's best performance that I've seen. I still haven't seen The Witch or Queen's Gambit. But this movie is just awesome. It's Furiosa. It's an awesome movie. I don't care if people don't like this movie or not. But again, I think George Miller's movies can be very mixed. But this movie is definitely not a mixed bag. It's awesome. It's just what you want. It delivers on its action, its visuals, and overall just see more of this Mad Max universe, as we kind of like see more of what the whole Morton Joe brother thing with, Gastown and Bullet Farm. We see more of that. It's just great to see some more of this world. I love Furiosa, and it's like, I'm still even debating if I prefer, if it's either Furiosa or Dune Part 2 is my favorite films of the year. But right now, they're kind of equal. I love both of these movies when it comes to this year. So coming in at number 1 is, of course, Mad Max Fury Road. The best Mad Max movie and just George Miller film in general. And look, I know I didn't say this back when I was talking about Furiosa. Do I think Furiosa is, not as good as Fury Road? Not exactly. I still love these movies equally. But everyone has to remember, Furiosa is a very different movie than Fury Road. Fury Road is an awesome chase film, and Furiosa is a epic origin story. And it's really something that you either got to be in the mood for, either one of them. But on to Fury Road, it's just an awesome action film. And what's really important about this movie is just kind of the fact that, George Miller had been, his last 3 films were these PG-rated kids films. And if you want to even say, Lorenzo's Oil was also kind of a, it wasn't really a kids movie, but it was still PG-13, and it wasn't really it really wasn't like the Mad Max trilogy or the Twilight Zone segment or Witches of Eastwick, where it was, very crazy and wild and R-rated. He hadn't made a film, Fury Road was something that he hadn't made since 1985 or even 1987 with Witches of Eastwick. Again, because it's also kind of as wild. But Fury Road, it really delivers after making 3 kids movies. It showed that George Miller is still one of the best filmmakers in Hollywood. He can still make a great R-rated action movie that's better than most of the other action sequel remakes that were happening at the time, like the RoboCop remake, Terminator Genesis, Die Hard, Good Day to Die Hard. It showed that it was better, and it was also better than a lot of other also sequels that had the directors come back. It's way better than Star Wars, the prequel trilogy by Lucas. It's way better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's way better than the 2 Ridley Scott Alien films. George Miller did truly the impossible and exceeded every single person's expectation of what he could do and what he could do with the Mad Max franchise. He was able to pull it off after 30 years of waiting for this franchise to come back. He did it. He made one of the most outstanding films of all time, and it got all the Oscar attention. Not the best box office results, but still, it is just, Fury Road is awesome. It gives us some of the best car stunts we've ever seen that was actually there with still CGI elements. It's still got a lot of great, like, character moments, a lot of great, like world building and, like, details to this world. And just spectacular moments that it's like, that is, like, good commentary on today with modern day terrorism. And it's just, everything about this movie just works. It is a great action film, it's a great action sequel, and it's one of the greatest films of all time, and it is why one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. Because I love George Miller, I love pretty much most of his movies, and I think he should deserve a lot more respect as, like, Martin Scorsese, Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, or Christopher Nolan. He deserves so much respect today, and at times it doesn't feel like it's deserved. And I can't wait to see whatever he makes next. Hopefully Mad Max The Wasteland happens, and whatever he makes after, I will always be there to support George Miller. Thank you guys very much for watching this video. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.